In a spacious office, illuminated by a window that provided a panoramic view of the city, Gregory was deeply engrossed in an old leather-bound book whose pages carried the scent of time. On the mahogany desk, a black and white photograph displayed a young family, he, his late wife Elizabeth, and their still young daughters. It was one of the few distractions he allowed himself, a break from business and a moment of reflection. However, that moment of serenity was abruptly interrupted by discord coming from the adjacent room. Voices escalated into a cacophony of accusations and defenses. "I can't believe it, Isabella. A new car and those extravagant jewels again with the money that will be rightfully ours." Amber, the eldest, had a sharp voice tinged with disdain. "Why are you so concerned about what I do or don't do, Amber? I work and contribute to the family business, and anyway, it's none of your business how I spend my money," Isabella retorted, her voice rising in defiance, pride evident in her posture. Stacy, always the mediator, quickly intervened, attempting to soothe the escalating conflict. "You're both exaggerating," she said, taking a deep breath and running her hands through her long hair in a gesture of frustration. "Firstly, the money isn't even ours yet. And even if it were, we need to remember the values our parents taught us. We can't get lost in luxury and forget where we came from." Gregory sighed deeply, closing the book with a snap. These frequent arguments were wearing on his patience. How could his daughters, whom he had raised to value hard work and integrity, become so entangled in trivialities? Deciding it was time to intervene, he stood up, adjusted his jacket, and walked towards the room, preparing to confront the growing rift between his beloved daughters and the principles he held dear. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, palpable like a storm about to erupt. At the center of the argument were the three sisters, all wearing expressions simmering with defiance and irritation. Amber, with her eyes half closed and a sarcastic smile on her lips, pointed an accusing finger at Stacy. "Oh, Stacy," she began, her eyes gleaming with malicious amusement. "Do you really think you have any moral high ground to judge us? I saw you myself in that luxury store buying that outrageously expensive set of equipment for your yoga studio. It seems like the path to enlightenment doesn't come cheap, does it?" Stacy, taken aback by the unexpected attack, straightened up, and a blush crept onto her cheeks. "You must be joking, Amber," she retorted, her voice trembling with indignation. "While I was investing in something for my well-being and personal growth, what do you do? Oh right, I remember, you spend fortunes on five-star restaurant dinners and those exotic trips to places you can't even pronounce correctly. Please don't put yourself on a pedestal as if you were some exemplary example of responsibility." The two sisters were so engrossed in their argument that they didn't even notice Gregory's imposing silhouette standing at the entrance of the room. He watched for a moment, his face contorted with disappointment and disgust. With a deep and authoritative voice, he interrupted the bickering. "Enough," he ordered, making both of them fall silent instantly. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. Are you really fighting over money and luxuries you haven't even inherited yet? Do you know how many sleepless nights, risks, and sacrifices were required to build this fortune?" He approached his daughters, his eyes searching each of them. "I didn't work hard my whole life to see you squander it on passing whims. It was meant to be a legacy, a responsibility, not a source of childish discord." The room was filled with heavy silence, only the sound of the sisters' labored breathing cutting through the air. The small town of Belleville in the heart of Ohio had never been a place of great opportunities. The aging houses with faded roofs reflected the reality of many working-class families who lived there. Gregory grew up in one of them, a humble home with thin walls and windows that allowed the cold wind to whistle through during the winter months. From a young age, Gregory had the responsibility of helping out at home. As a child, he would wake up before dawn to assist his father in the small backyard garden, and after school, he worked at the local grocery store, restocking shelves and making minor repairs. But there was an unquenchable fire within him, an ambition that transcended the narrow boundaries of the town. Upon completing his studies with much effort and dedication, he secured a position at a promising technology company in Chicago. His long hours of work and commitment didn't go unnoticed. His rise was meteoric, and within a few years, he had accumulated his first significant capital. It was during this time that he met Elizabeth at a financial market seminar. With keen eyes and a sharp mind, she was a formidable market analyst. What began as a professional partnership quickly turned into a deep personal connection. They married under the glow of a golden sunset, promising to build a future together. Elizabeth had a gift for deciphering trends and opportunities. Under her guidance and with Gregory's earnings, they invested in startups, properties, and bonds, multiplying their wealth. The house was always filled with laughter, with the arrival of their 3 precious daughters, a reflection of their love and partnership. However, life has its own plans. When Elizabeth, on a sunny and seemingly ordinary day, had a car accident, everything changed. Her sudden departure left Gregory with a broken heart and the weight of a monumental responsibility to care for the 3 girls alone and keep the family business safe. In his chest, a silent promise to Elizabeth, he would not fail. Gregory's office in Chicago became his refuge and his war room. The glass walls provided a panoramic view of the city, a daily reminder of how far he had come. He refused to be a victim of circumstances, becoming even more resolute in his mission. After Elizabeth's tragic departure, his desire to protect his daughter's future was palpable in every decision he made. On a rainy afternoon, he convened a meeting with his top advisors and consultants around the long mahogany table. They discussed market prospects. "Technology is the future," commented Richard, a young visionary whom Gregory had come to respect. "There are promising startups everywhere waiting for funding and mentorship." Gregory, nodding in agreement, replied, "We will delve deeper into this sector. I want to know about all the innovations and where we can invest." But it didn't stop there. He also ventured into the real estate market, recognizing the importance of land and buildings as tangible investments. He worked with Sarah, a renowned property broker, acquiring strategic land and participating in development projects in emerging areas. "Gregory, I've been looking at the West Side," she said during a meeting. "There's significant potential there. With the city's growth, that area will be the next hotspot." Gregory smiled, then said, "Let's secure our position there, Sarah. I trust your instincts." His days were long, often stretching into late hours of the night, but Gregory was driven by an unwavering purpose. He knew that every signed contract, every closed deal, was paving a safer path for Amber, Isabella, and Stacy. Over the years, his reputation grew. Gregory became not only a successful businessman but also an admired entrepreneur. His work ethic, determination, and ability to see opportunities where others saw risks elevated him to a prominent position. The vast fortune he built was a testament to his tenacity, but in his heart, he knew that his true legacy was the 3 young women he called daughters. Throughout his upward journey, Gregory earned respect and admiration in the business world. More than that, his generosity made him beloved throughout the Chicago community. He funded scholarships for promising young students, donated to hospitals, and invested in programs to aid the less fortunate. Even amidst all his success, Gregory maintained a humility that few in his position possessed. In his sprawling mansion, a photograph of his humble family still held a prominent place, serving as a reminder of his roots and what truly mattered. However, on that sunny Saturday, the sound of discord infiltrated his ears. Sitting in his personal library, surrounded by shelves overflowing with books, he could clearly hear Amber's stride and voice arguing with her sisters. "Did you see the necklace James gave me yesterday? Each diamond is the size of a pea," she boasted. Isabella, never wanting to be outdone, retorted, "That's because you haven't seen my new custom-made dress by a designer in Paris. It cost a small fortune, but it's worth every penny." Stacy, always the peacemaker, tried to change the tone of the conversation. "Have you ever stopped to think that there's more to life than expensive things? I bought a new virtual reality system for my meditation practice, and it's amazing." Gregory closed the book he was reading with a thud, a sense of discomfort forming in his chest. He loved his daughters more than anything, but he couldn't ignore what he was hearing. His success, which should have been a blessing for his family, seemed to be turning into a curse. Did I go wrong somewhere? He muttered to himself, the echoes of his daughter's laughter filling the air, painfully contrasting with the memories of the humble values he and Elizabeth had tried to instill in them. In a melancholic silence, Gregory walked through the mansion to his office, a dark and richly decorated space. In this moment of introspection, an idea arose in his mind, a way to test the depth of his daughter's love and loyalty. He contacted an old friend, Ronald, who ran an actor's agency. He explained the situation and asked for help in finding the perfect actor to play the role of his doctor. Days later, an actor named Martin was introduced to Gregory. With a head full of gray hair and a confident demeanor, he seemed like the perfect cardiologist. Together, they meticulously planned the act. During a family dinner, Martin, now Dr. Harrison, informed the daughters about Gregory's concerning diagnosis. He has a serious heart condition. It's not imminent, but it's something we need to be concerned about. The sisters looked at each other, Isabella's eyes filled with tears while Amber and Stacy held back their panic. But as the days passed, it seemed that the gravity of the situation had not really affected the sisters as much as Gregory had hoped. Then, on a cold autumn morning, Gregory decided to take his plan to the next level. He scattered some pills and medications by his side, unbuttoned part of his shirt, and lay down on the floor of his living room. Stacy, after a yoga class, arrived home and upon seeing the horrifying scene, screamed, her heart racing. Rushing to the phone, she called her sisters and Dr. Harrison. In minutes that felt like hours, the room was filled with screams and pleas. Dr. Harrison, with a grim and solemn expression, checked Gregory's pulse and shook his head. "I'm sorry," he said with a broken voice, "your father is gone." The cemetery was shrouded in a blanket of fog and a heavy atmosphere, punctuated by the silent sobbing of mourners. A large white tent had been set up with chairs arranged around a closed casket in the center. Fresh flowers, wreaths, and photographs of Gregory adorned the space, turning it into a sanctuary in his memory. In a hidden location nearby, Gregory sat dressed in plain clothes, looking at various monitors. He had a live feed from hidden cameras at the funeral. His eyes filled with tears as he heard the emotional words of the people, but he was especially attentive to his daughters. Amber, wearing a simple black dress, was the first to approach to pay her tribute. "Dad," she began, her voice trembling, "I miss you every day. Your legacy will always live on through us, your daughters. I promise to make you proud." Isabella, in a black veil and gloves, spoke about the love and care she had always received. "He was our safe harbor, our rock. He taught us the value of hard work and dedication. I will never forget the lessons he gave us." Stacy, the youngest, appeared the most shaken. "I would give anything for one more day with him, to hear his laughter, to receive his advice. I love you, Dad." Gregory was moved, but he knew that the true test would come afterward. So, he hired a renowned detective agency to follow and observe his daughters in the following weeks. In the first few days, the sisters remained close, crying together, sharing memories, and supporting each other. However, as the weeks passed, the detectives began to report changes in their behavior. Amber was seen on several romantic dates at expensive restaurants in the city. Isabella was caught shopping in luxury boutiques, making extravagant purchases. Stacy, on the other hand, was immersed in her passion for yoga, buying expensive equipment for her home studio. The morning seemed to have been forgotten, and the luxurious lifestyle that Gregory had feared so much was back in full swing. He watched disappointed from the shadows. The imposing family lawyer's office was filled with tension. With antique furniture and sober decor, the tall windows allowed beams of light to cut through the dimness, highlighting the thick sealed envelope on the desk. The sisters, sitting side by side, anxiously awaited the moment when their father's last will would be revealed. The lawyer, Mr. Warner, a middle-aged man with graying hair and round glasses, broke the seal and retrieved a yellowed parchment. He cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses, and began to read, "To my beloved descendants." Amber, Isabella, and Stacy leaned forward, holding their breath, as the lawyer detailed how Gregory's fortune would be distributed. I bequeath the entirety of my fortune and financial assets to the Dreams and Futures NGO, dedicated to providing education and opportunities to underprivileged youth. The words echoed in the room, and the silence was palpable. Mr. Warner continued, "To my daughters, I leave our ancestral home. In this message, just as I struggled from a young age and built my own path, you must seek your own independence. The value of hard work and dedication cannot be measured in figures. Take care of each other, and know that my love for you is eternal." Amber stood up abruptly, her face flushed. "This can't be true. We are his daughters. How could he leave us with nothing?" she exclaimed, her eyes welling up. Isabella, with her nails dug into the armrest of her chair, added almost hysterically, "I had plans. I need the money to launch my new fashion collection." Stacy, on the other hand, seemed lost, with a vacant and distant look. She murmured, "What will we do now? How can we sustain ourselves?" Mr. Warner, accustomed to reactions of all kinds, tried to calm the situation. "I'm sorry, ladies. Your father's will is clear. He wanted you to learn the value of self-sufficiency and responsibility." Amber and Isabella shot furious looks at the lawyer, while Stacy, more introspective, seemed to be absorbing the depth of her father's message. In a dim corner of a small adjacent office, Gregory stood behind a one-way mirror, allowing him to observe the unfolding scene in Mr. Warner's office without being noticed. The room was stuffy, smelling of old wood and dusty books, lit only by a weak desk lamp. Seated in a weathered leather armchair, he breathed slowly, trying to calm the anxiety-induced racing of his heart. His eyes, once so lively and determined, now appeared tired and sad. A small table beside him held a photo of his 3 daughters when they were younger, smiling and hugging, a reminder of what he hoped to reclaim with this final test. He listened intently to the raised voices and indignant protests of Amber and Isabella. He felt a pang in his chest as he realized that his daughters, who had always been his greatest source of pride, now seemed to value wealth more than the principles he had tried to instill in them. It was painful for Gregory to hear the bitterness in Amber's words and Isabella's materialistic concerns, but what truly struck him was Stacy's silence, which he interpreted as disappointment and confusion. "Have I failed?" Gregory wondered, gripping the arm of the armchair tightly. "I hoped this would bring them back to reality, make them remember the values that Elizabeth and I tried to teach." He closed his eyes for a moment, reminiscing about the days when he told them stories about his humble past, the struggles he faced to build his empire, and the nights when Elizabeth spoke to the girls about the importance of compassion and gratitude. Gregory sighed deeply, a mixture of disappointment and hope. He had faith that at some point, the lessons he tried to impart to his daughters would surface, and they would find a path of unity and understanding. But at that moment, all he felt was a profound sadness at realizing that materialism and selfishness had overshadowed the fundamental values he held so dear. Following the shocking revelation of their father's will, the lives of the 3 sisters changed drastically. With their financial comfort abruptly taken from their lives, the grandeur of the mansion they now owned starkly contrasted with the new economic reality they faced. The absence of their mother, the always warm and understanding figure, was a void that now felt even deeper. In the first week, Amber, Isabella, and Stacy struggled to accept the new reality. They tried to sell some of their most valuable possessions to maintain a similar standard of living, but quickly realized that sustaining this lifestyle was out of reach. And for the first time, the possibility of work, something they had never seriously considered, became a necessity. "I got an interview at a local boutique," Isabella said hesitantly one morning, her voice almost a whisper. It was difficult for her to admit that she needed a job. Amber, swallowing her pride, secured a position in a local office, while Stacy leveraged her passion for yoga to start giving private lessons. Each, in her own way, was taking the first steps toward financial independence. There were moments of frustration and despair, of course, nights when Isabella cried silently, feeling lost without the glamour of before, evenings when Amber returned exhausted, burdened by the responsibility, and days when Stacy, missing her mother more than ever, sought refuge in her meditation. However, over the months, something remarkable happened. Adversity brought the sisters closer in a way that wealth never could. They began to support each other not just financially but emotionally. They celebrated small victories together and offered shoulders to cry on in defeat. And as the years passed, the three sisters flourished. Amber opened her own law firm. Isabella became the owner of the boutique where she had started working. And Stacy launched a yoga and meditation studio. Without the shadow of wealth and comfort, they learned the value of hard work, determination, and, most importantly, the unconditional love they shared as a family. All of this was achieved without the guiding hand of their mother, but with the strength they found in each other. The mansion was quiet on a cool night, with the moon illuminating the vast hallways and the soft sound of the fountain in the garden being the only distraction. The three sisters, now businesswomen, were gathered in the main room, sharing stories of their days. Laughter, a sound that had long been absent, filled the space, highlighting the transformation they had undergone. Then, a familiar silhouette slowly emerged from the shadows of the adjacent hallway. It was a tall figure with an upright posture and a beard, now longer and grayer. Time seemed to stand still, and the sisters stared at that figure with wide eyes, incredulous. "Father," Isabella murmured, her voice a trembling whisper. With tearful eyes and a shy smile, Gregory nodded. "My dear daughters," he began again, his voice hoarse with emotion. He barely had time to say anything more as the three of them rushed toward him, enveloping him in a tight embrace, the kind that seemed to fill all the voids in the soul. After a moment that felt like an eternity, they finally let go, and Stacy, with tears in her eyes, asked, "Why, Father? Why did you do this to us?" Gregory looked at each of them, searching for the right words. "I feared that wealth had corrupted you, that the ease of fortune would prevent you from appreciating the value of hard work and sibling love. But I was wrong, and I'm sorry for the pain I caused." Amber, her voice gentle, said, "It was painful, yes, but we've become better. We've learned to value what truly matters." Isabella added, "I never want to place material things above our family again." Stacy, always the most reflective, said, "Maybe it was necessary for us to find each other again as a family." Gregory, moved, looked at the three strong and independent women before him. "I couldn't be prouder of you." The night progressed with conversations, laughter, and shared memories. The wounds of the past were beginning to heal, and the family was once again united by love and understanding. And while the mansion slept under the cloak of night, inside it, a new chapter was just beginning. The resonance of that revelation echoed deeply in the heart of every family member. The vast room, once a stage for verbal disputes and bitterness, was now silent, with the darkness of the night casting dancing shadows from the flames flickering in the fireplace. The antique clock, passed down through generations, ticked away, marking the rhythm of the reflection that everyone was immersed in. Amber, whose eyes once gleamed with the ambition for more riches, now shone with the epiphany of a deeper truth. She whispered, almost as if talking to herself, "Our disputes, our craving for more, it all seems so trivial now. All this time, true wealth was right before our eyes." Isabella, always the lover of fashion and glamour, added with humility, "The attire, the jewels, they don't warm the soul, not like a sincere hug or a genuine gesture of love." Stacy, sitting in a corner with her legs crossed, her demeanor as serene as ever but now with an added depth, reflected, "Meditation taught me to seek inner peace, but it was adversity that showed the importance of harmony on the outside with those we love." Gregory, realizing how deeply his actions had impacted his family, felt a mix of guilt and gratitude. "I feared that the fortune we had built had driven us apart, blinding us to what truly matters. But now I see that true wealth is in the bonds we cultivate, the memories we share, and the sacrifices we make for each other." Isabella, walking to one of the windows and looking out at the moonlit garden, said, "We need to nourish our souls and our relationships, just as we care for our possessions. The value of things is not in their price, but in the meaning they hold." Gregory nodded, embracing his daughters one by one. "I've learned that we can't measure wealth by the possessions we own, but by the moments we live and the love we share." The family, now awakened to a new reality, committed to prioritizing love, understanding, and hard work. Together, they recognized that true wealth lay in each other's hands and in the hearts beating in unison. Thank you for joining us today on Deep Stories. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video.